Adam, the White Hair Master. Season 2. Episode 11. After hearing Sarah's sad story, Adam accidentally discovered that Sarah's grandfather was a swordsman. It is not always possible to meet the descendant of a swordsman, so Adam took the initiative to invite Sarah into a restaurant, both to dine and also to hear Sarah talk about her grandfather. After sitting at the table and ordering some food, Sarah asked Adam if he had ever heard of a ghost market. When he heard about the ghost market, Adam was not surprised. He said that he had heard his master talk about the market before. As far as Adam knew from his master, that market existed a long time ago, but now it no longer exists. There you can buy everything from illegal goods to spiritual goods. Hearing what Adam said, Sarah appeared a little disappointed. She thought she would surprise Adam with her story. Seeing that, Adam said that was all he knew, and he begged Sarah to tell him the story of her grandfather. At this point, Sarah smiled brightly and began her story. According to Sarah, this story takes place when Jace, Sarah's grandfather, was very young. At that time, he had a close friend named Michael, a policeman who went with Sarah's grandfather to the ghost market. Like every other day, Michael went to the police station to work. He was the captain of the investigation team here. Around noon, one of Michael's junior police officers announced that a woman wanted to see the captain. Immediately, Michael went out to meet the woman. It was an elderly woman. After greeting the woman, Michael asked her to tell her story to see if he could help. The woman introduced was Mrs. Brown. According to Mrs. Brown, she has an antique watch, a relic left by her late husband. After her husband died, it was the thing she loved most, but a few days ago, it was stolen. Because the watch meant so much to her, Mrs. Brown wanted to ask the police to find the watch for her. As a rather emotional person, Michael fully understands what it feels like to lose something that Mrs. Brown cherishes. Michael tells Mrs. Brown not to worry, go home and rest. He will try to get her watch back as soon as possible. Hearing that, Mrs. Brown seemed more secure than when she first arrived. She repeatedly thanked Michael. Mrs. Brown said she would go home and wait for good news from Michael. As soon as she walked out the door, Mrs. Brown talked to Michael about the characteristics of the watch. Michael immediately memorized those features. Then Michael said goodbye to Mrs. Brown at the police station gate. When Michael watched Mrs. Brown walk away, Michael did not forget to call after her to repeat his promise. He said he would find the watch as soon as possible and bring it to Mrs. Brown's house. Michael is very confident in this case. According to him, finding something stolen in this city is not difficult for him. That very afternoon, Michael immediately set to work looking for the watch. At this time, the security situation in the city is quite stable, so there are not many thieves, which makes Michael more confident in his search. But contrary to Michael's initial expectations, even though he went to all the antique shops in the city, interrogated major criminals in the area but still had no clue about the watch he was looking for. A few days passed, but no new results made Michael begin to feel uncomfortable. One evening, Michael went to a small restaurant in the city. He had an appointment with Jace, his close friend. As soon as Michael entered the restaurant, Michael saw Jace waiting for him with a table full of food. Jace then asked why Michael was always on time, but was late today. Pulling out a chair and sitting down, Michael smiled apologetically to his friend and said that he was involved in a case and he had a bit of trouble with it. Before Michael's answer, Jace was quite surprised. Because as far as Jace knows, Michael is a very capable and very sharp cop. When he heard that his friend was having a hard time investigating, Jace's surprise was inevitable. Jace then filled Michael's glass of wine and asked him about the case details if he could help. Holding a glass of wine Jace had just poured him, Michael began to tell the story of the woman who asked him to help her find a stolen watch. Although this was only a small case, Michael could not find the watch even though many days had passed. After Michael finished, Jace asked him where he had been looking and couldn't find what he was looking for. Michael immediately listed the places he had been to before. According to Michael, in this city, he knows the locations specializing in the consumption of illegal goods and the wanderers specializing in theft. But he noticed that everywhere he looked, there was no such watch. Excluding the possibility that he was overtaken by them because of this was impossible, and they did not dare to do this. After Michael finished, Jace asked if Michael had searched the ghost market. According to Jace, if you can't find something in normal markets, go to the ghost market. There are things that ordinary people can never find. Michael had been told by Jace before, but he had no idea where the market was located. At his friend's puzzled expression, Jace raised his glass to invite Michael. After finishing his glass, Jace said that he had nothing to do today, so he would take Michael to the ghost market. Even if he couldn't find the watch, it still gave Michael a chance to experiment. Hearing that, Michael immediately got excited. He poured another glass of wine and offered Jace. The two continued drinking until midnight. Looking at the clock hanging at the restaurant, Jace said it was time. The two got up to leave the restaurant. Jace then led Michael along a small lane toward the outskirts of the city. The further they went, the more they advanced into the mountains next to the city. Looking around, Michael couldn't help but wonder why there was a market here that he didn't know about. This area many times he passed through both day and night in the search for crime but never met any market. Seeing Michael's attitude, Jace laughed and said that, without a guide, the average person would not be able to find the ghost market even if they spent a lifetime. Jace went and explained to Michael that in the ghost market, there are not only ordinary things but also illegal things. Therefore, those involved in trading here must always comply with strict regulations. The time of the market changed constantly, but so did the location. The forest the two of them were going to was just one of them. In addition, all people who come here, whether buying or selling, must erase all traces of even the slightest trace when leaving. After walking for a while, the two came to a large rock. Looking at the shape and position of the rock, Michael realized that it wasn't just lying there. It seemed like someone had done it on purpose. Pausing in front of the rock, Jace tells Michael that this is the entrance to the ghost market. After entering it, Michael's every move must be according to Jace's arrangement. Otherwise, the possibility that the two will not see the sun tomorrow is very high. After giving Michael a few more instructions, Jace started walking around the rock. Although still not seeing anything, Michael still followed Jace. After going around the rock twice, Jace stopped and looked ahead. Michael also stopped. As soon as he looked ahead, Michael was suddenly startled. He couldn't believe his eyes anymore. As if guessing Michael's surprise, Jace didn't turn around but just smiled and uttered a single word: "Welcome to the ghost market." The scene in front of Michael's eyes right now was extremely ghostly. Everything was illuminated by the faint light of oil lamps placed on the ground. Everything was eerily silent. It seemed that the people here only traded with each other with their eyes. Before entering, Jace gave Michael one last word. Jace said that after entering the market, Michael was free to look around to find what he was looking for but could not say anything. Michael nodded as an answer. The two began to enter the market. Michael's first impression of this market was not very good. Everything here is dimmed by the weak light of the oil lamps. If you are not a regular person, it will be difficult to recognize what the people sitting here are selling. Fortunately, the watch Michael was looking for was not difficult to identify. Otherwise, Michael wouldn't know what to do. The deeper he went inside, the more strange things Michael came across. Sometimes some products make the weak people stand on end. Michael noticed 2 stalls near him. A man selling a dried human head and many bones that Michael knew at first glance were human bones. Besides, there were even a few dried corpses carefully wrapped in shrouds. The other stall sells guns and ammunition. Now Michael understands why the government controls guns so tightly, but criminals can still get weapons to commit crimes. The sellers are also not much friendlier than the item they sell. When looking at these faces, it is not difficult for Michael to think of dangerous criminals. They also did not hesitate to look at Michael with unfriendly eyes every time he looked at their stall. Looking at the things on sale, Michael couldn't help but whisper to Jace. He said that he was a policeman, so seeing the goods here made him very uncomfortable. At his friend's attitude, Jace just laughed and advised Michael to calm down. According to Jace, people wouldn't need to go to this market anymore if it could be sold openly. Looking at the people who were doing business with each other, Michael realized that these people did not speak a word to each other. They just held hands. After a while, they both smiled as if the deal was over. Because their hands were hidden by their sleeves, Michael had no idea what they were doing. He immediately asked Jace about how these people deal. Jace explained to Michael that it was an age-old method of price negotiation. Perhaps since this market was formed, this method was also created. Originally, it was because talking in the ghost market was taboo. It was created by the creator of this market. Violators all suffered tragic results. In addition, this way will ensure the transaction. The selling price is known only by the buyer and the seller. So the two continued to quietly walk around the market, but went 2 rounds in a row, and Michael still couldn't find the watch. Feeling anxious, Michael leaned close to Jace and whispered, worried that the watch isn't here. He asks Jace if there's any way to find its whereabouts. But instead of answering Michael's question, Jace turned to Michael and asked what time it was. Despite his impatience, Michael looked down at his watch and told Jace that it was 3:40 a.m. According to Jace, the time this market operates is about to end. In a few minutes, everyone will disperse. This market will be as if it never existed here. If the watch cannot be found by that time, likely, it is not here. For a quicker search, Jace asked Michael about other features of the watch. At this point, Michael remembered that this watch had a feature that it would ring a short bell every half hour and longer when it was an hour round. Jace nodded to show he understood. While walking, Michael suddenly heard a bell coming from a man's shopping cart near him. To Jace's surprise, Michael leapt forward, sprinting toward the man. This person seems to be the one who stole the watch from Mrs. Brown's house, so as soon as he saw the person rushing, he immediately ran away. Seeing what was going on, Jace quickly understood the problem. Although he started behind Michael, Jace's speed was faster. Soon he caught up with the man. When the man turned his head to look back, Jace was right behind him, followed by a massive kick in the back. Immediately, Michael rushed over and overpowered the man. From Michael's quick and proficient control of people, the man recognized Michael as a policeman. He immediately shouted. Michael heard it was just normal words, but later, he learned that it was the hot voice of criminals when they wanted to notify each other of the presence of the police. The man continued to scream. His screams attracted the people who were doing business in the market. Soon, shiny knives were drawn from the store shelves and onto them. Jace immediately observed the situation and began calculating the number of opponents. He did not forget to remind Michael to prepare mentally for a fierce battle. Seeing a group of aggressive people with weapons in their hands approaching, Michael immediately raised his gun to the sky and shot in the air. shouting that he was a policeman catching criminals. But it seems that this method of yours did not work. As for Jace, at this time, he had 2 knives as familiar weapons. Jace tells Michael that his method won't work on these people. They are all criminals, someone is still wanted. Once they know Michael is a policeman, they want to eliminate him faster. That's why Jace reminded Michael not to be lenient with these guys. If anyone had to die, nothing would happen. And just like what Jace just said, as soon as Michael admitted he was a cop, the surrounding people became more aggressive. Even the skeptical people began to take out their weapons and rush towards Michael. They were being chased by the police, so this was the perfect opportunity for them to take revenge. The melee from the very beginning proved to be extremely fierce. In front of the overwhelming number of opponents, Jace continuously dodged dangerous attacks. Along with that, each of his attacks is dangerous. Although it did not end the opponent's life, their tendons were immediately severed. This makes them unable to fight anymore. The situation on Michael's side was no better, frankly, worse than Jace's side. Because he is a policeman, soon the gangsters have gathered quite a lot on his side. Without hesitation, he immediately opened fire on the oncoming crowd. Although he knew that these guys were all bad people, Michael didn't want to end their lives. He just shot them, wounding them, rendering them incapacitated. Michael's goal is that after this is over, he wants to arrest some of them and bring them to the police headquarters for investigation. Accurate shots were fired continuously, targeting the wrists and shoulders of the thugs. But regardless of the wounded, the rest continued to charge, growing angrier and angrier. Soon Michael had fired the last bullet. This is also the time that the thugs look forward to the most. They didn't give Michael a chance to change the magazine. One guy charged at Michael with a dagger in his hand. Luckily he dodged it in time. Realizing that the enemy was more and more crowded, Jace and Michael did not discuss. Both turned their backs to each other to limit the possibility of being attacked from behind. Michael did not have time to change another magazine. He could only use the empty gun in his hand as a weapon against the aggressive thugs. After repelling some of the guys surrounding him, Jace ran back to the basket the man was wearing earlier. Sure enough, the watch was in it. Immediately he turned to call Michael, and the two immediately left the market. Although both are stronger than humans, with the numbers so overwhelming, they are only afraid that they will not be able to hold out anymore after a while. The two immediately ran to the rocks. According to Jace's words, the people inside would not dare to chase anymore after exiting this area. This is the rule of the founder of this market. All friction is not brought out of the market to avoid unwanted troubles. Running a short distance, Jace grabbed Michael's shoulder and said that running here is enough, not worrying about the other thugs chasing anymore. Then the two went to Mrs. Brown's house together. But when we got there, no one seemed to be home. Michael called out, and at this time, a man came out to greet the two. It turned out that the man was Mrs. Brown's son. He said that this afternoon his mother had suddenly fallen ill. Everyone in the family was very worried, so they took her to the hospital. Hearing that, Michael immediately had a bad premonition. He immediately ran to the hospital. But fate was ironic. When Michael reached the hospital, it was too late. Mrs. Brown had passed away. Looking through the door of the hospital room, Michael could see Mrs. Brown lying motionless. There was a sudden feeling of regret in his heart. Michael slowly pushed open the door and stepped inside, blaming himself for his poor job. He couldn't even find a watch. More than now, he felt terribly sorry for Mrs. Brown. He slowly placed the watch in Mrs. Brown's hand, apologizing constantly. Out of the hospital room, Michael turned to the doctor and asked about the time of Mrs. Brown's death. The doctor said that Mrs. Brown had just passed away at 3:40 a.m. Hearing this, Michael couldn't help but be surprised. He clearly remembered that the moment the clock chimed when it was not yet time for it to ring. But at that time, because it was so urgent, he didn't have time to think about it much. By this time, he seemed to have realized that anomaly. There seemed to be an inexplicable connection between the watch and Mrs. Brown. The story ends here. Sarah says that after the incident that night, her grandfather took Michael back to other locations where the market took place. Through that, the police have caught many dangerous criminals, some of whom have been hiding for many years. As for Adam, the story was so captivating that he listened so intently that he forgot to blink. At Adam's admiring gaze, Sarah suddenly smiled and said that it seems that Adam has idolized his grandfather too much. According to her, Adam's ability and bravery are not inferior to his grandfather's. Hearing that, Adam was greatly surprised. Being compared on an equal footing with a swordsman was something he had never imagined before. Adam then put down his chopsticks and told Sarah that we have to talk about his master and his predecessors if we talk about legends. They are the people who have spent their whole lives exorcising demons and kill demons without regard to fame and gain. Hearing about these people, Sarah was extremely surprised. She always thought that people like her grandfather had no heirs, but it seems her guess was wrong. According to Adam, his master's surname was Smith, and his master was a powerful magician named Jackie. Adam's master also had a brother-in-law. Sometimes, Adam also heard his master mention a very beautiful woman who often accompanied them. According to what the master said, they destroyed a total of 100,000 evil spirits, or maybe more. Compared to what the master had experienced, Adam realized that he was still extremely incompetent. While Adam talked to Sarah, both were extremely excited about what they had just discovered when Sarah's phone rang. It seems that someone with a spiritual problem needs help. This time, it is related to a dormitory.